technical rescue, which includes trench, and then all of us are the local instructors for all of King County. So really nice we got to come out today, share a little bit of our world. We've really enjoyed seeing a little bit of your world. Definitely got some stuff that we're going to take home and move into our systems. And hopefully we can show you a little bit, make you a little more prepared if you ever have to call 911. So things that we want to cover today, I want to explain a little bit of how our system works, right? So you understand kind of the capabilities, what to expect. The other piece is we want to talk about calling 911, how that's going to work, and how everything would play out if you did have an on-site injury or accident, and what your expectations would be, and kind of what we expect of you as well, right? We're not going to just kick you off. We'll probably might need your machine. We might need some of your lumber. We might need your people to move equipment. A lot of options there. After we wrap up that conversation, we're actually going to go through a full mock-up of a rescue. It'll just go real time with all the pieces, and I'll sit here and narrate and talk about all of it. Once we're finished with that, invite you guys all up. We'll leave the system in place. You guys can come check it out, come ask questions, come tell some stories, whatever you need, and that's kind of the afternoon. So everybody cool with that? All right. So let's talk about how I ended up here. About 7 or 8 years ago, as we were starting to teach a lot of these trench classes, the problem for the fire department is I don't have access to machines, sites, operators, and we don't have a fixed trench prop. They exist out in the world, but they're kind of not great for teaching. The best place to teach is in real dirt, real soils, real problems. Take the machine, smash a corner, say, okay, cool, we'll shore it up. And so lucky for me, Tony, go ahead and wave your hand over there. So for those of you who don't know, that's Tony. He's the operations manager for J.R. Hayes. So through some mutual friends, we got connected. He said, hey, I can do all that stuff for you. And in turn, he's written trade journals, gotten a lot of good PR on our end. And in fact, we got to pay him back a little bit by doing this today. But I want to make a plug towards partnering with your local fire departments. You guys have a lot of knowledge that we need. When I first started teaching rescue or being involved in rescue, it was very manufacturer driven. Or it was other firefighters teaching other firefighters. And one of the disciplines that we work in is structural collapse. And we'll talk about breaching concrete, right? So someone sells us some gee-whiz tool, and we use that, and we just think, well, that's the way to do it. And finally, someone gets connected from a guy in industry who does concrete every day, and is like, that's a horrible tool. You should use this one. And it's definitely, the pendulum is switching that way. When we start talking about emergency shoring for trenches, we're going to come to you guys and be like, you're in this dirt every day. What do you do? What machine are you using? What tool are you using? And so those partnerships are huge for us. And then I think on the other side, right, you get the FaceTime with us. We start talking about common language. So if you find yourself, or all of a sudden there is an accident, you're prepared to work alongside us, describe it in such a way that we can get resources there fast enough. So don't be afraid when we show up on your job sites. We're not here to get anybody in trouble. It's usually out of curiosity. We travel the area we cover in our firehouses is called the first due, and we travel our first due all the time to have that like real-time knowledge, like, oh yep, there's that massive project up off Military. Cool, let's go drive on there and see what they're doing. Oh man, they're doing crazy sewer work and they've got a 20-foot trench. All right. And then we go back to the firehouse and we talk like, hey, are we ready for that? Well, I don't know. Let's get the tabulated data out. Do we have the equipment for that? Do we need to adjust our system so we're prepared to deal with any sort of hazard that might be there? And that all happens by us both opening up our doors and communicating. So when you see us, come say hello, show us what's going on, and vice versa. Like we're only there just to be better and better serve you guys, because ultimately we work for you. You guys own the rigs. We just take care of them and take care of problems when you guys need us to. So let's talk a little bit about our system. So for our bread and butter, right? Bread and butter is we are fire department. We put out fires, and then specifically in Washington, all firefighters are EMTs, so we deal with medical problems. A bulk of the work we do is medical problems. That's what we do for most of our day. Every once in a while, we get lucky to go fight a fire or two. So since that's kind of where everything started. And then as the evolution of things, and we even find this within dispatch, when you call 911 and someone says, I have a problem, and they don't know where to direct it, they just send the fire department. They'll figure it out. And so through that, we have evolved, right? And you hear about us dealing with hazardous material problems. We have marine divisions. We have technical rescue. We have wildland. So the amount of hats that we do is constantly growing. So the expectation of, say, a person that rides on an engine company to be able to do all those disciplines really well isn't a reality. So what we're seeing is more specialization. So within that, and a lot of the folks that are behind me, we work on rescue units, right? And those are, not every fire station has the capability to shore a trench. It's usually more of a regional asset. Say there's 2 or 3 for South King County, 2 or 3 for Seattle, right? And these are specialty units with specialty training. And that goes from, we deal with water rescue, confined space rescue, trench rescue, rope, and then structural collapse, which is really us preparing for this big earthquake, right? The ability to shore up buildings that have been compromised, breach concrete to make rescues and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we all land in this world. So how that works as far as us responding to your problem, right? Say you call me and say, hey, Tim fell in, trench wall came down on him, you guys, we need you, right? You'll probably get an 8-car engine first, and they won't have a whole lot of training above the awareness level where they can identify the problem, isolate, deny entry, and then get the appropriate resources started. And so what will come is what we call like a tiered response. So then eventually that heavy rescue will show up with the people and the training and the shoring equipment. So just don't be surprised when a single rig falls up. That's just the tip of the iceberg to what's actually coming to your problems. All right, so let's talk about how we get more of that iceberg exposed. How do we get more of that stuff rolling earlier? It has to do with the conversation we have when we call 911. So I'll do a better job of scanning the crowd. I missed some people last time. So how many people have been working on a job site where you had a trench accident? Show of hands. Quite a few of you. Come tell me your story sometime after the thing. I want to hear it. So how many called 911 for the trench accident? So you guys did. How many mitigated it on their own? That's a really common one. And then how many folks have called 911 for anything related to a problem on their job site? So quite a bit. All right. So when you call 911, when it gets to our communication center, the first person that's going to answer the phone is a call receiver. And what the call receiver does is just an interview. So they're gonna interview in a really quick way to decide what your problem is. And it starts at the basic level. Is this a cop problem? Is this a fire problem? Right? So you're like, hey, someone fell in the trench, they're hurt. Cool, fire problem. We go over into that section. And then from there, they're just going through with the who, what, where, when. You know what I mean? And they're going to go through that stuff. Some language that you guys can use, for one, is we need to calmly, call and stuff like that and make sure we're getting our information out. But in the case of what we're dealing with today, is you letting them know that this is in a trench that either collapsed or an unshored trench will get specific resources going. So the whole time that you're having that conversation with the call receiver, they're entering all the data into a CAD terminal. At the same time, there's a dispatcher who's getting all that real-time information. And they're the ones that take your location and decide which resources are quickest to respond to where you're at. So if you can use language that says someone is buried underneath soil in an unshored trench, that will get that rescue response going sooner. That will get the shoring equipment and all the pieces that you're about to see to your problem sooner. Let's talk about the where. How many folks with the job sites you're working on know the address where you're working? You can pick up your phone right now and rattle off the address to where you're at. Right? Make sure you have that, or you have someone that's designated to do that. How about someone that's designated to have a phone on them? Right? We all assume that in this world that everybody has a phone on, but let's make sure we have one adult, maybe it's a competent individual, that they have their phone on them so that, hey, call 911, get them going. The other one is a lot of the job sites you guys are working on are massive. And when a complex is completed, I have a pre-fire plan. So you can tell me building A, and I can look up on this PDF and say, yep, there's building A. Okay, take a left, go through the roundabout. Yeah, it'll be on the right. We don't have that when you guys are doing construction work, right? So if you can say, give me information like, yep, go to 1404 South 320th, and then meet me at the gate, I'll have one of my guys in a truck escort you in. That's huge. That lets us focus on the problem solving that we're doing, and we're not worrying about running around trying to find you, because that all cuts away from time that we're using to help you guys. Does that make sense? So that's a huge piece. And we might need to stage, like, if we have our flagger run out to wave you in, right? But there's a couple corners that we get. Maybe we stage people at each one of those turns to direct them in. The other one, to anticipate. If you have a trench accident, and you'll see the cadre of people that we have here is about roughly what's going to show up on your scene, and they're going to come about 3 in apparatus. So you're going to have a ton of apparatus that show up on your scene. So if we can clear out space to stage that equipment, and then and we'll talk about it more when we go into the demonstration, where we might be calling upon multiple Vector trucks if we've got to move any amount of dirt and other resources. So if we can get trucks out of there, if we can clear space, that's a huge, that really sets us up for success. And what we find when ultimately we see operations, and we don't hit home runs all the time. We have plenty of strikeouts in our world. And what we find is these little details in the very beginning have massive impacts on how the rest of it can go. If that first engine company is doing laps around the complex trying to find you guys, right? That delays the response, and then it can augur in everything from there. So these are ways that you guys can help. Little simple things. I think that's all I got to say about that. We ready to go, sir? All right. Well, so we're going to get into the demonstration right now. Like I said, I'm going to narrate it as it goes along. And you'll get to watch everybody do their thing. So we'll set up the scenario right now. So the crew over here is they're digging trench for some utility line. They're not planning on going into the space, so there's no shoring available. Their apprentice Timmy, he fell in the trench again. This time he broke his pelvis and broke his leg. So he's laying in a trench that's not collapsed, but there's no way he's crawling out. So obviously we're not going to send our workers into an unshored space. So we decided to call 911, and we'll go from there. One of the pieces I forgot to mention, having that competent individual make first contact with that officer to be able to say, this is what we're doing, this is what I know about Timmy, this is maybe the utilities we're working on, some hazards you might want to think about, is huge. So not allowing your adult to run off before we make contact with them is huge.
We're working on a sewer line. Tell me, his leg hurts, hip hurts. What's his name? His name's Timmy. Hey, Timmy, can you hear me? All right. Shut that off and get everybody out of here, all right? Lock it out.
So we're having them shut off the machinery, right? Vibration can make our problem worse. I'm not going to move the machinery because that's going to cause more vibration. And ultimately, we might end up using the bucket for rigging if we have to either do a heavy lift or if we have to move the patient out of the trench. So we're just going to leave it in place, shut it down, keep the operator nearby.
We're going to get ladders on each side, ground pads.
So we're governed by the same rules that you guys are. So one of our first moves is we're going to put access ladders into the trench. So just in case as we're doing our operation, Ryan happened to slip in, he's got a quick egress to get out of the hazard zone. The other part is Cap over there, he came in as a single engine, he came in for an aid call, and all of a sudden realized, oh no, this is a trench call, and so he had to upgrade his response. So it wasn't done at dispatch, so now our resources might be a little bit delayed. The other piece is Ryan's got that orange box with him. That's our air monitoring equipment. So unlike the lecture that was done before, us as an organization have decided that when we're operating in trenches, we're going to treat them as confined spaces. One resource that we're really lucky to have is we have hazardous material units that can come, and they are pros at air monitoring. They come with 4 air monitors, so we can do a surface monitor, we can run tubing and do monitoring at the base and mid-level. They even have ventilation equipment to mitigate any hazards that they might find. They can do all the catalog for us and even start our confined space permit. So we have that luxury in our world, so we choose to use it because in the place where we can mitigate hazards, that's a really easy one for us. So we're securing our top side, so our rescue components come in. These guys are placing ground pads on the side of our trench, and the purpose of these is so that we can distribute some of the weight, so we're not adding any live loads to the side of our trench and causing additional failure. One of the principles of the fire service is we go life safety, incident stabilization, and then property conservation. So right now, we never want to show up and make an incident worse. So one of our first job is to protect the people, protect the space that we're in, and then we can move forward with our rescue. So once those are in place, we can start dropping the panels. So we use a traditional thin form like you. Actually, before we get into that, so everybody, Cap over here, he's our acting RGS, our rescue group supervisor. This is his scene that he is in charge of. So he took that marking paint over here. So he's got a couple X's on the edge of the trench. That's where he found some fissures, and he wants people to stay off that area. He put a P for patient. So if we did have a failure in the trench, we know exactly where that person is, right? We're capturing some of that intel as we showed up, and we're keeping it available if anything decided to change. So the panels we use. So we use FinForm panels similar to what they have back here. What we add to it is that upright vertical 2x10. We call that a strong back. And what happens is he was talking about earlier the hydraulic rails like the Portland system, right? Where you have a rail and then you have your 3 struts on it. Because of how dynamic some of the trenches that we work in, we use single jacks. We don't have any double systems or triple systems. We use singles, but we want to have a way to tie them together. So what you'll see, and you get a better shot of this when we get to the end of it, is that we're going to shoot the jacks against those, or the shores against those strong backs, and then as we go to enter into the space, we'll nail them off. That's how we tie the panel and the struts all into place. They're really heavy, that's why the ropes are on them, and you see two-person teams putting them in place. Takes a little bit of coordination. But like I said earlier, these won't be on fire trucks, right? These are going to come on those specialty rescue units that are more of a regional asset. So at this time, so we're a paramilitary organization, so we use groups and divisions. That's how we divide up our labor or divide up our area. And so we're going to assign people teams and a team leader for each of the things that need to be done. So a really common one is we're going to create a panel team, and so it'll have we'll call it a panel group leader, and then the other person, there'll be another person who's in charge of shoring. And so the RGS panel team and shoring team work together to decide, hey, what's the best place for that initial course to come in? We're going to choose right over the patient, right? We're going to protect that patient space, and then we're going to expand it from there so we can create a safe area for the patient to be in, and then also a safe work area. A lot of our components need to be shuttled over the trench, and sometimes maybe access on a far side of the trench wouldn't be available, so we can use either ground ladders. The really nice thing, I get one ladder truck show up to my scene, and I've got a dozen ground ladders. So we can use them for access, we can use them for bridging. You'll see them put some sheeting on that. And so we can pass components on. We'll actually move this ladder over and change our access into that protected space like the first gentleman was talking about. Everybody saw how Drew came over here and sat on the terminal end of the trench. So the shoring is his job. So he's back here explaining to everybody, or explaining to the two sides, hey, I want it up here on this side. And I'll actually go grab a shore. I'll show you guys what they're working with. So in the rescue world, we use hydraulic, but we also mainly use pneumatic. And the bonus for us from pneumatic is because of our SCBAs, we have an air supply. So we can use our SCBA bottles to use this system. And the nice thing about pneumatics is that they're really versatile. So this Paratech product has a bunch of different feet that I can add to it. I can also make extensions, so I'm not fixed on like, oh, I've only got shores for a 36-inch trench, right? We can go up to, I can't remember what it is, we can go into the hundreds of inches. There's a connection right here where I put a pneumatic hose. You'll hear them use the term up on blue. So when they do that, they add air to the shore until it's nice tight. They have a set pressure that they set to. Once it's there, they just simply manually move this collar into place, and then it mechanically locks. We actually remove the air from the shore, and it's all based on this mechanical lock. These feet will land on the strong backs, and there's holes in there, right? So we'll just toenail those in, just so we tie the panel and the shoring all together. So that's how this system works. We also use this speed shore, the hydraulic shores as well. They have their limitations. The pneumatic ones are just a lot more versatile, and that's why we tend to use this product. So you'll notice as they're going through their operation, and I apologize the way that the stage is up, there's a lot of stuff that's going to go on you can't see, and I'll try to talk through it as they're going through it. But you'll find that it's not just like, okay, put the panels in, now we put the shores in. All this stuff can happen as once. So as soon as that first panel set is in, they're shooting shores, and we're just building our shoring system out. What our rescue plan is, Cap's come up with, is that we're going to shore this space all the way to where this ramp's at, and then we're going to put the patient into a Stokes basket and just use a rope and a handover system to slide them up the ground ladder up the end of it. So everything's happening at the same time. You'll find us coming back and adding more levels of protection. They're worried about this ladder kicking out as we put someone in there, so we put some pickets in there to prevent that. We're also going to lash our access ladder so it doesn't prevent any slides. I really appreciate the part where they were talking about fall protection. That makes a lot of sense in our world, right? I don't have the ability to park a ecology block over here and have everybody on fall protection and still be able to get all their stuff done. But there are parts of this where we might have to utilize it, right? If I'm doing a 14-foot trench and you see Adam coming in here off the access ladder, it might warrant that we're going to do some fall protection. So we'll just simply throw them in a harness, grab a couple wraps up on a rung, and it'll just keep from that big macro, that big fall. You know?
That looks good right there.
You got a question, sir?
Okay, let's go. Chris, up on yellow to 100.
Oh, that's great. That's a great question. So those air hoses, we have every different color of the hoses so we can distinguish one from the other. And it prevents us from like charging a shore that we don't want to charge. So the person holding the shore, he'll say up on blue, and then the person, you notice that the person that's way back there on the controller, they don't have to look inside and be like, which one's he holding? He just follows the blue hose. He has two controllers on the other side. So it's just a way that we distinguish one shore from the other. So it's a good question though, thank you. This crazy tool right here, this is one of them, like through all this training that we came up with. We talked about that we want to add all our shoring implements remotely as much as possible. We don't want to commit people into the trench. So that collar you saw me hand spin, what they did is they duct tape, I think it's a rubber band to a set of chains for a tire, and then they just use the friction of that to spin that collar into place. It doesn't need to be wrenched into place. Once it stops, that shore isn't going to compress. So you've captured that surcharge load, and that's no longer an issue. So you hear Adam down there hand nailing. One individual in the last class was like, "Hey, why don't you guys use impact guns?" It's probably coming up, right? The fire service really shied away from using battery-operated tools for a long time, especially during the world of nickel cad, because we weren't using them that much, and they just weren't reliable enough. And now with the battery technology the way it is, carrying an impact on our rescue trucks is a lot more feasible. Nice part is that duplex nails and a hammer will always work, right? It is fun though when we do the teaching because we can tell we'll send someone in there to go nail off some shoring stuff, and you can tell the person who came from the trades or the one that was the video game kid. You know what I mean? It's just over there staring at the nail and the hammer, and we got to go do some ground school. Like, come on, bud, we'll show you how to do this. Don't get your thumb. So, luckily in the rescue world, the people that come to us tend to be the folks that came from the trades. We got problem solvers, so that's those trade folks. So I'll explain a little bit more. We've got two rescuers down there. The shoring, you'll see it when you get a walk over here. But there's a column of shoring for every one of these 2x10s that's sitting up out of the thing, and they're just marching along, nailing all those off, making sure they're all secure. One of our benchmarks that we like to meet is we want to get hands-on patients, like right away. If you're down at the bottom of the trench, the last thing you want to do is just be down there by yourself. As soon as someone's on top of you being like, man, it's okay, we got this, shoring's in place, like you're in a way better place. The other piece that we want to talk about is that, so I talked earlier about medical, right? So every firefighter in Washington State is an EMT. Real basic level stuff. We can do some airway management, we can do CPR, pretty limited in our scope. The next one up are the paramedics, right? That advanced life support. And so who's heard of crush injuries or crush syndrome? Sorry, right? It's a thing. So if for some reason our rigging breaks and we pin somebody with an object we were lifting, or you unfortunately end up with the lap full of dirt, the way your circulatory system works, all the primary pipes that deliver everything kind of go on the inside, but the periphery ones come on the outside. We can pinch those off with objects, right? And what ends up happening is you get like a backflow of blood that can go into your feet, but it can't leave. So you get that edema, you get that swelling. That blood gets toxic. It's really bad when it sits there. It's not getting filtered out, all that stuff. So if I come over and I lift that pipe off of you, if I lift that chunk of dirt off of you, I can actually send you into cardiac arrest with that bad blood. So the medics want to get in and get some treatments going, right? So if you have an airway problem, they can get a tube inside of you. We can help you breathe. We're going to do IV interventions so that we can counteract some of that bad blood and make it so it's not such a traumatic shock to your heart as we pull that object off of you. So there might be some times where we get this shoring stuff in place, we get someone on top of you, but we bring a medic down and we do a little bit of care before we move you. I know you want out, right? But it might be warranted. So just so you guys are aware of that. So they're just finishing up nailing off. Same time that that's happening, we're continuing to shore all the way down to where our ramp is at. You'll notice Captain Lamano here is dropping in some dunnage behind our panel. So we're at the end of the day. You guys have learned a lot about shoring systems, right? So with our shores versus what was the other? What are these boxes called? Yeah, we don't use those, so I don't even know anything about them. But we want positive contact, right? Any place that we allow, a void space where we allow dirt to accelerate, it's how we're going to snap shear our components in half. So our big spot that we are concerned about is I want to capture that 2/3 section of my trench. That's where that big wedge collapse, lean collapse, rotational collapse, those are where those can be generated from. But eventually I need to worry about the top side as well. And so I don't have positive contact between the fin form and my dirt. So we'll use dunnage, we'll use sandbags, we'll give them just backfill dirt. But what we want to do is create a positive contact from that shoring element through the fin form into our soil. So this is, like I said, this is just a progressive thing. We're just making our system stronger and stronger as we go. So they're down to our patient right now. They're getting them ready to go in the stokes. You guys can see it coming down the line. We could hook up some fancy rope system, but we don't need to. Gotta usually just manpower. We called out the one-to-one mechanical advantage. Just pull the rope up, right? We're using that ladder over there as a set of train tracks. So with the metal stokes, right, it'll slide up nice and neat. All right, so they're pretty well done tying everything off. They'll start working, getting that mannequin in there. We were super nice to them. We brought one of the really heavy ones. I think it's like 200-something pounds. So they're getting a little bit of a workout in there. But our bulk of our system here is all complete. I didn't run a timer, but this happened pretty fast. And I think it's worthwhile to say you guys could have that expectation if you called 911 in this area. I can't speak. The last group came up and was like, I'm in Cedar Woolley, and I'm like, I don't know anything about Cedar Woolley. I don't know if this will come. But I can say for King, Pierce, and Snohomish County, they have very active rescue teams that are capable of this and a lot more. I don't know if for you that walk through, but go check out the poster boards in there of systems we create for T's and L's and stuff like that. And that is national training. So that's something that we are equipped to do, something we train to do. We train on it annually, and it's well within expectation. Things get a little gray for us when we start talking about really deep trenches, just like you guys. You start getting into that 20 feet and stuff like that, then we're going to have to consult and get some outside agencies to help us out. That would be a really complicated problem. So, but usually if you're going that deep, you've got a pretty good engineered system set up. I know at least talking to Tony, that's their end. So, all right, so our patient is in the stokes right now. So we've put a patient harness on them, and then we're going to take some simple webbing and tie them into the stokes. And so as we go to pull up in the ladder, we don't want them to slide back out, right? So this is going to quickly secure them in there. Shouldn't take too long. We've got we hammered it in our last shore right there, so we have a great working area. If I had the companies and the personnel to do it, we're not going to do it today for the sake of time. I would continue to shore this thing all the way out. As a group, we haven't dived into the inshore business. There really isn't a product that makes a lot of sense for us. We're going to start, that's something from this conference, was like, oh, that's a conversation we need to have. How will we deal with that? And obviously, if you guys had something on site, we would definitely be into using that. While they're wrapping up, we could talk about that real quick, right? So if I didn't have that exit ramp, then we would have to come out vertically. So there's a couple ways we could do it. We can just lasso them up and take 4 people and just pull up on the rope. We can either use an aerial or perhaps this bucket and set up some overhead rigging, right? We carry all the rope rescue equipment. We have a set of 4-to-1 kind of pre-rig that we could go down and clip the person and pull them out that way. So that's something where, hey, I might leave your operator in the machine, because at that point, with this thing short, I'm less worried about vibration hazards causing any sort of failure. So cool, we can move the machine overhead, clip in the person, or we might use an aerial. But it's all access issues, right? Every scenario that we're going to be on will dictate itself. So you hear that horrible noise of metal on aluminum, and our patient is out. Give her. So pretty quick process, right? But it takes, just like you guys, it takes us, we got to train on a lot, we got to think about it a lot, we got to make sure our equipment's in place. So events like this are huge for us. So the last group was asking questions, getting to the kind of the dark side of all of this, was asking rescue versus recovery, right? And that's the reality of these scenarios, right? You get a big enough chunk of dirt on you, the likelihood of surviving that's pretty hard. We will always approach these accidents, though, that it's a rescue, right? If it's a set of pipe, the person there might be a void space or something like that. We'll never get to a thing where we'll walk up and look at it and say, nope, no way, right? Like, we're going to go through that mode. We might change our shoring system. We might run it a little bit tighter, make sure we do all our checks and balances and stuff like that. But we're gonna treat it like a rescue until proven otherwise. So sorry to get in that, but the questions had come up earlier, and so I want to talk about it. But anything I missed? Thank you. That is something I missed. Perfect. Great question. Yes. So we used to hand shovel all the dirt when we do these training exercises. And someone like Tony came by and it's like, why are you doing that? Nobody shovels anymore. And I was like, what do you mean nobody shovels anymore? And he's like, you ever seen a back truck? And he brought one out. And I was like, I'm never shoveling again. And so, yes, we are on board with vac trucks. We're not going to move any sort of dirt without one of them. We might have a hard time using the, what are they called, the water knife? Is that what it's called? Yeah, I mean, just depends where the person's at. We might refrain from using that. But using them is great. Obviously, the question comes in like, well, hey, we can't have vehicles near the trench. We're going to shore it, then bring the truck in. Ideally, I want to kind of bring them into the terminal ends. How many people operate vac trucks here? Fair amount? All right. Go back to where you operate your truck and go find your local fire department and go be willing to spend an afternoon over some coffee explaining your truck. Because they're all different as far as how far can you reach, what's the capabilities, what's the capacities. The operators that we talked about, if we're moving dirt dry, is probably really likely we're going to clog it. Is that true? And so they talked about having second trucks ready and then also having a nearby dump site depending on the volume of dirt we're using. So that's all stuff that, and then if you are operating your truck and you get involved in one of those scenarios, just understand too, there'll be someone assigned to you like myself that's like, this is our objective, we need to move the dirt from here, and you'll have to work kind of hand in hand with us. So, but no, that's a great point. We're all about them now. Yes, sir. Right. Tony was nice enough to make me a big master list that we've moved out to all the companies of everybody to call, and we're just going to start calling until we can find one. I'm lucky enough to work in Federal. Do I have a Lake Haven? Anybody from Lake Haven here? All right, never mind. So Lake Haven, we have a mutual aid contract with them for confined space for their sewer stuff, but then it also bled over to the trench safety stuff. So they have a 24-hour on-call. Hey man, I need 2 Vector trucks. Yep, make it happen. So it just depends. So I know for Captain Henderson, he's got a real good deal going with his public works. So this kind of ties back into the thing I talked about originally. Is like, let's have this conversation today, so we're ready for the 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock on Sunday afternoon call we're gonna have. So I know with Seattle had a high-profile one up in North Seattle. Is anybody part of that? They were using their city trucks and they had one wad up during it, and luckily they had 2-3 deep in staging, so they were able to just drop all their plumbing, back that one out, bring in the next one, and finish their activity. So, but they train with those guys. They train with them all the time. The city shop guys know the rescue guys, and ideally in a perfect world we'd be in the same scenario. So, any other questions?
Just a comment. Thank you. That was awesome.
All right, we're not done yet. We're not done yet. So what I want to invite you guys to do is you can come down. I know you missed a lot over here, so we can come down, check out the system. Obviously, we have an open trench. Please don't fall in it. Don't be like Timmy. And then these guys will be around too. go ask them, hey, what was your job in this thing? What do you do? There's a lot of stuff that they were doing that I didn't get an opportunity to explain. So, yeah, and I know they don't want you inside because that might mess with the speaker. So let's hang out, enjoy the sun, tell some stories, and then and ask some questions. So thanks for your time, guys.